Welcome to Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. This power couple is building stronger marriages one day at a time. Talking about real issues on love, relationships, and marriage longevity. Let's break down the barriers and engage in healthy conversation with your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie. Take a seat and buckle up because things are about to get real.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Welcome to another episode of Loving Beyond the I Do podcast.
With your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie.
That's me. All right. So thanks for tuning in to another week to hear what we have to say. And today we have a special guest with us,
Kamini Wood.
So welcome, Kamini. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
We're so glad to have you.
So I know we did it in the intro. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Kamini.
All right. So personally, I'm the mom of 5. My oldest is turning 20 in August, and my youngest just turned 8 at the beginning of July. Professionally, though, I work with individuals, a lot of high achievers, people pleasers, perfectionists, those trying to do more in their everyday life. I work with them one-on-one to really, truly gain the clarity that they're searching for, moving them from feeling that feeling of stuckness and not enoughness into a place of clarity, into a place of deep self-acceptance so that they can move forward in their professional careers, but also to build healthier, non-toxic relationships. Oftentimes when I'm dealing with people who are these high achievers, it bleeds over into their relationships. And that's actually, Jason, you and I had a nice conversation about that, which sort of led me to you guys. So that's just me in a nutshell.
That's wonderful. Actually, we're kind of intrigued with both sides, the family of, mom of 5, and with your professional aspect. So that's beautiful. Wow. So how does your career bleed into your personal life as far as with your 5 kids? Because I know, you talked about your oldest daughter just a second ago. So how does that work? Do you find yourself working with your kids the way you work with your clients?
So that's a great question. They actually call me out routinely and they'll say, stop coaching me, just be mom. Although I will say, so my 2 oldest are definitely high achievers. My oldest one is a professional ballerina. And then my oldest son, who's my second oldest, has aspirations to play lacrosse in college. So he's a rising senior. So this summer has been all about recruiting and just the stresses that come with that. And I'm not going to lie, my training and just the work that I do on a daily basis has definitely come into play and has been very helpful for them, I believe, as well as for me as a parent, being able to separate, for instance, my own issues or my own projections onto them. So in that sense, I will say that I have really truly leaned on my professional training just to be that supportive parent that I needed to be for both of them.
Well, see, you have a kind of an unfair advantage because you have these tools and everything.
Right.
So you're like that super parent now. It's like, okay, now I need to step back and let them grow.
And that's why they say, Mom, stop coaching us.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Take off your hat.
It's really funny, though, because my husband will say at times, like, I'll just let you handle this.
So when the career that you chose, was it after having kids or was it, before? So how did you come into the field that you're in?
I absolutely love that you asked me that question. So I came into this field after I had kids, but because of my kids. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So I am a recovering people-pleasing perfectionist. I say recovering because I still have my tendencies. But I had gone through the shoulds, right? So I went, basically was in the business world doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing. I actually was running my husband's law firm, which was lovely in the sense that it was fulfilling in some sense. But what I realized as I was working there and also raising these kids who had started to become teenagers, my kids started emulating my people-pleasing nature. And that they were the catalyst that made me take that hard look at myself and recognize, oh, wow, if I don't start shifting up some of how I am showing up and the way that I approach my own world and the fact that I'm defining my validation, for instance, through other people's happiness, it was that hard look that I took it myself to say, okay, I need to go through this transformation. I need to work on this. When I went through that, I realized that first of all, there's other people who have similar experiences or feeling that similar feeling of not enoughness. And I can now take my experiences and what I've learned, and I can pay it forward and help others on their journey to really, truly understand that they can be mom, they can be wife, they can be a career woman or a career man, and yet they don't have to define themselves by those accolades of other people, right? Or by the validation of other people. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, and I'm sorry for doing that.
No,
That's fine. That's fine.
It was
more is best this time. More is best.
It was really becoming a mom that was the gift that was the catalyst to recognize that my uniqueness and all that I have to give was actually within me and wasn't by pleasing others or doing for others necessarily. So from that, I went through this training process. So really what I believe that I bring to my clients is not just training and not just, life experience and business experience, but it's personal experience as well. And that combination allows me to truly serve the people that I work with.
So how old was your child or your children? Did you have one or did you have two at that time? Because I know they're little emulators, right? So we look at them and you go, wow. And we see ourselves, and most of the time it's not the part that we like. Right. We see the part of us that we really need to change. And that's really a good thing and a bad thing. Right.
Yes. So at the time I actually had all five, but it was my middle child, my middle daughter, who is now 15. She was the one who was that one that shifted it for me, where I saw myself in her. And as you said, the parts that they're not bad parts. They're just parts that were, putting others so much in front of herself. And I realized, wow, she gets it honestly.
And so, how did you handle that within yourself? So I know, like you said, you worked with your husband's law firm, and that was fine. It was beautiful. So did you feel as though you were stuck or unproductive or could have just been more? As women, we understand that. Well, at least I do. I know sometimes, no,
we don't understand. No.
As a man, I think as a woman, we're trying to juggle so many things as a mom, as a professional, as a wife, and still trying to be that people pleaser. So, what was that turning point and did you feel stuck?
So what I realized was I was completely defining myself by those roles and those hats that I was wearing. Right. So I was either mom or I was wife or I was the manager of the law firm. I was all these things to all these people. And I realized I didn't really know who Kamini was. I didn't really know what I needed and wanted. So that was really the turning point for me, was recognizing, yes, those things were I was happy about them. I was grateful for the opportunity to, help him build his business. But at the end of the day, it was his dream. It was his desire to be an attorney and to run this law firm. Mine, honestly, and what really I realized over the course of my work was that I had always had this desire to work with people one-on-one. Back to when I was 7 years old, I used to pretend that I was talking to people about what was coming up for them and what was their issue and how could I help them and support them. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's what my inner being always wanted to do. But I had covered it up with the shoulds. You should go do this. You should go do that. You should be, the person, that, yes, that's your husband's dream. You should be supportive. You should help do, and I wanted to do those things. I'm not saying I didn't want to do them.
Absolutely.
Right.
But it was about, you can be supportive and you can also be your own person. It's about becoming interdependent and not codependent, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I want to lean in a little bit on these high achievers and how it affects your family. We were just having that conversation a few days ago. How, you're moving up the corporate ladder, and then your family suffers. So it has to be a balance, but it's almost hard to be a balance if you're trying to advance and then the family should be supportive and they just kind of don't get all of your best efforts. How do you kind of help them to see that there's an equal balance? You can move up the corporate ladder, but also you can, help the family out and be very supportive there.
It's interesting. I often say that balance, the definition of balance is going to shift, and you have to give yourself the grace to shift it, even if you have to do it daily. A client of mine and I were having this very conversation yesterday because she's really moving up the corporate ladder. And it's really about, recognizing that your balance on a daily basis is going to shift. But then it also is about communication and really putting it out there for your family and saying, this is this is what I really need, or this is what I really want. And this is what I'm requesting of you in terms of that support. So for me, balancing 5 kids, the marriage, the dogs, the rabbit, all the things, right? And also running a business full time. There are moments where I've learned that it's okay to say to my family, especially because most of my kids are older. The youngest is 8, as I said before, being able to say, this is what I need, and I'm requesting, X, Y, and Z in terms of help, because part of balance is about asking for the support and being okay with being vulnerable. High achievers oftentimes don't want to let people know that we need help or we need support.
That shows weakness.
Right. We put on our Superwoman, Superman cape, or that mask that I've got this all. And it's okay. We have to get to that point where it's okay to utilize our support system, those people that we know it's safe to be vulnerable with, and let ourselves go there. When we can do that and authentically communicate and ask for the things that we need, they then have the autonomy to say, hey, mom, yeah, I can do that, or no, I can't. But then we can negotiate about it, which allows for that balance to actually, or at least move towards hopefully achieving that balance.
That's funny.
So for a high achiever, it's just hard to ask for help and just like help with the family. Like, I got everything. I got the job. I have the family. I have everything under control, which they don't. But is that what you're saying is the main problem?
It's thinking that we either have to have it under control, because if we show weakness, that's not okay. And the other is that part of it is, as a high achiever, we sometimes lose track of what it is we actually need, because we are so busy just doing the next thing. So it's about slowing down and checking in and saying, what is it that I really am feeling, and what is it that I really need? And then taking that step to communicate it.
I was just going to say that's funny, because kids really do bring out that. I think when we have kids, we get to a point in our relationships and we're going like, I need more, or I feel as though, you feel stuck. You're doing everything well, but you feel stuck. And then you realize that it's you that you're lacking in, right? It's the personal me time. It's the development of me. And it also happens at work, right? So when we're trying to please our boss, when we're trying to climb the corporate ladder, then we get to a point where we realize that, why am I still feeling stuck? Because it's something you want to do and you're happy in it, but you're not pleasing you at the same time.
Right. Yes.
So for moms out there, or just individuals who come to you, what is the first thing you do as far as, I think I want to stick with like people who are married. So I know because I say that because, when you're single, it's kind of a different scene. But when you're married and you have kids,
family,
and they come to you, whether it's male or female, so let me ask this first. Do you find yourself having more males or more females?
It's so funny. I thought that I was going to have more females, and I thought that I was only going to work with females. And over the last year and a half, I would say that I'm about 50-50.
Wow.
Men are stepping up. Men are asking for help.
Men are starting to be a little bit more vulnerable now.
And they're willing to have conversation about it, which I love. I think that it's the greatest thing in the world.
That's powerful in itself. They don't feel intimidated or, less
or embarrassed.
Than.
I mean, because
that's a huge
I'm supposed to have everything together. As the male, I'm supposed to have everything together.
And I think that there is an element of that. I like to say that I provide a safe space so they don't feel intimidated talking to me.
It has to be hard. I guess if you're feeling stuck, you're looking for something, right? So you're looking for something, and we attract to us what we're looking for. So that's a good. Okay. So going back to the initial question, what is the first thing that you usually suggest, provide? I don't know what's for your clients.
So it's interesting that you started off with, or catered it to in a relationship or married. Interestingly enough, I fully believe that all of it, whether you're single or married, it's all about the relationship with yourself. So we always start with that basic premise of recognizing, what are your core values? What are your core gifts? Really starting to learn how to re-engage what you're feeling and what you're needing. Because if those things aren't present for you, it's very hard to be in relationship with somebody and have that authentic communication and that authentic dialogue or just authentic connection, if you will. So where I always start is about really understanding what is the relationship with self. When we take ownership of that, then we can have those healthier relationships with our spouse. if we're not willing to take a look at ourselves and own even, it's never a 50-50, that whole idea of, it's 50-50. I don't believe in that. I think some days one person is giving much more than the other one, because that's that interdependence, right? That's being able to shift with each other. But there's always a percentage that is yours, and being able to own that percentage is really, really vital in order to build those healthier relationships with each other.
I know we always tell people, on the podcast, that relationships work when we kind of get ourselves together first, right? So in order for me to have a healthy relationship, I have to be in a space where I'm happy with myself. I'm complete with myself. I'm not looking for someone to complete me, right? So I say that to say it has to come into some type of turmoil, because usually when you're in a relationship and then you realize that you need more or you're stuck, and now you start to change or develop the you that you want to be, it has to create some type of turmoil in the relationship, because now you're changing and the other person is used to you having you a certain type of way.
That is a really good point, and it's very true, right? Because as you start to change or grow, the other person is used to you showing up a certain way. And that's when I say that authentic communication, that emotional intimacy with your partner has to be there, where there is that safety to communicate, okay, this is what I was experiencing. I was feeling stuck, or I was feeling, X, Y, and Z, and really working with your partner to name it. And this is what I'm working on. Communicating with them to let them know. Because much like the analogy I use is, it's almost like you're throwing a pebble into the water and it ripples out, and eventually the water will settle back down. It's kind of the same thing. As you change, you're creating this ripple, and your partner's like, what the heck is going on? And they're all
right. Absolutely.
But if they know what's happening and we're communicating with them, they then have the autonomy to meet you there and to recognize, okay, this feels weird, but we communicate about it, and then we come to a new place of harmony and connection with each other. That's the hope and the goal, because hopefully, truth be told, we're always evolving and growing. And so the hope is that we grow together, right? As we're in these relationships, that both people grow and that one doesn't grow and the other one stays stagnant. So again, when we're able to communicate with our partner that this is what I'm working on, they're now aware of it. So they can also take aligned action to hopefully meet you there, or to recognize that, okay, this is going to feel odd right now, but we're going to come to a new place of harmony and contentment with each other.
Would you think that if communication is not there, so we deal with relationships and marriage, and most of the time communication is an issue, right? So one is trying to communicate, but the other one may feel as though either it's because they don't know how to effectively communicate, or they just don't know that they're not communicating, or they don't want to.
Or they're just not communicating effectively. I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Right. So, I mean, in real life, we want to say, okay, we're going to change, and we want to communicate that to our partner. So do you find yourself sometimes having to kind of be the counselor and then kind of taking on both as your client? So say I come in as the client and then I'm married. And so now I'm having an issue with my husband because, as you said, I'm evolving and I'm changing, and it's kind of creating that ripple. Do you find yourself having to communicate on behalf of your client, or bringing both them and their spouse into, your office or into the mix?
What generally will happen is I will spend a lot of time with my client on communication and what are different ways to communicate, and really try to empower them to figure out ways to communicate with their spouse. There have been moments, I would say very rarely, but a couple people where we've had conversation with both people together.
Okay.
Because I'm trained in conscious uncoupling as well as calling in the one, which sounds counterintuitive. Like, why would you train in both of those? And the reason is because both ultimately come back to communication, ultimately come back to a relationship with themselves. And so I'm able to, through my own training, be able to deal with both people in the relationship. But what my goal would be is to empower the person that I'm working with, my client, to be able to communicate in a way where they feel like they are able to express themselves to their partner, including what they're working on in terms of the coaching that we're doing together. I'm thinking of a client right now who, interestingly enough, she and her husband had gone to couples therapy, and it just didn't work for them because nothing was ever really happening. I ended up working with her one-on-one, and she's actually seeing so much movement because, truth be told, she was able to shift how she was showing up. She was able to shift.
Absolutely.
And that empowered her husband to then do the same. And now they're seeing so much more the trajectory towards, finding each other again. We're catapulting towards that, which is just amazing to see.
Absolutely. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, Jason, I'm going to take you back into the personal realm. So, so now we're not the professional, we're in the personal. When you decided to do this, how did your communication with your spouse go? I'm working at your law firm. Yeah. I'm working here with you, and honey, I have something to tell you.
I don't want to work here anymore. I want to do my own thing.
Right. So how did that conversation go?
He wasn't exactly happy. Again, people pleasing comedy, right? So I was taking care of a lot of stuff. But it was about holding my own space and really, truly recognizing that he's going to have feelings about this and being able to hold space for his feelings, but also not abandoning mine. And it was really, very carefully through many conversations. And that's the thing too, is we often tend to think to ourselves, I should be able to have one conversation with my spouse about this and it's one and done and we move on.
Right.
It's not always going to be that way because both people have feelings. Both people have their own thoughts about things. And so their thoughts are creating their own reality. So when I offered this up, the very first thing he thought was, oh my gosh, she's abandoning me. And so he had really big feelings about that. And it was about recognizing and having empathy for those feelings, recognizing that could be that feeling that he has, and then discussing really what was happening for me, what was I needing, and the reason behind, not in an effort to justify. No, I'm not saying reason as in justifying my choices, but it was just giving him color, so that he could start processing through and recognizing this wasn't an abandonment of him. It was allowing him actually to grow into owning, his dream more authentically for himself. And for me also to find the thing that I'm passionate about and really live into that. And then when we're both in that place, we're both showing up to the relationship with, just more joy and happiness. And that obviously spreads across not just the relationship, but the family in general.
Yeah. Now, did you know? Yeah, I'm going to get in here. Yeah. Right. Now, you had to grow into that person, right?
I was going to say that, right?
So before, you're people pleasing.
Yes.
All right. So now you're going to say something that's not going to please the other person.
Yep.
Or it's not necessarily that. It's the combative you, right? It's you battling inside. Right.
So did you train to get to that point, or you just felt it within your soul that I need to make a change right now? I just need to do something different for myself.
And we ask that because there's people out there who are people pleaser, right? In a marriage or in a relationship.
And they want to do something different.
And they want to change. And it's hard because you don't want to create the ripple. You don't want to create strife, but you still want to move and you want to change. So let's give them something like, what was that process? Because it is a battle within yourself. Like, how do I do this?
100% it's a battle within yourself, because you are absolutely right. We don't want to create that ripple. We don't want to create the confrontation. We don't want to create the conflict. And it was really a process of working with my own coach, for instance, that this is something that my passion lies here. Therefore, this is what I want to do for myself. And this is how, for me personally, it was about recognizing, ultimately, it's not just for me, because when I do something that is self-full like this, I'm actually then showing up more. I'm showing up even more authentically, and am able to show up more for my spouse or for my kids. Right. So it was a shift from this is just for me into this self-full act. And I'm saying self-full intentionally, because I know that a lot of people pleasers think, oh my gosh, that's selfish. So I'm intentionally using this term self-full. When I take this action that is self-full, in essence, I am taking it so that the others in my life will actually also be able to benefit from it. It's not a selfish thing. So that was one mindset shift that I made. The other one was really to come to this place of, there might be conflict, but it's okay. I now have self-trust that I can meet that conflict, and I can do it with empathy, because I am a very empathetic person by nature, but also I can honor that empathy, be empathetic to my partner, but that doesn't mean that I have to abandon myself. And that was the big shift for me, that there's no reason that one has to abandon themselves in deference to somebody else, because truth be told, that's where the codependent relationship is. And codependency is just not a healthy place to be. And in an effort to build an interdependent one, it's about really owning your own space, who you are, and then living, in conjunction and in relationship with the other person. Not one is more important than the other.
So did that strengthen your relationship? Obviously it did. But for someone just on the beginning part of this journey, all right, they need to go have this conversation with their spouse, and they know that it's going to take them through a little rough patch, I always call. In the end, it's going to get better, right? I mean, you become a better person, right? You're going to speak your piece and how you want things to go. You're going to be empathetic about their feelings and things like that. But in the end, you're going to become a better person. Then now your relationship should evolve into a better relationship.
I will say it should. There are definitely those that aren't going to. And because we want to be real, right? There are some relationships that, if you have a people pleaser and somebody who might be, if it's a toxic relationship, it's just not built on a healthy dynamic or whatnot. It may not evolve into a place where the relationship survives, but you're going to be the person who makes the shift is living into their true self. So I would say that that relationship should evolve to a healthier place. I will say that the ones that weren't already healthy to begin with may not. If we're keeping it real.
And that's kind of where I was going with the other one. And sometimes it has to do, like you said, what was the relationship kind of built on? And then are we continuing that good foundation, or are we realizing that the foundation wasn't there in the beginning? So is your husband more of a dominant type of personality, or are you guys kind of, so how, and I'm asking that because again, the foundation, the personality, the people pleaser, all those type of personalities kind of play a role in the relationship that we have.
Yeah, it's a really good question. That's why I was sort of thinking about that one. I would say that probably as I was in my people pleaser role, yes. I would say now there's been a shift. And I'm not saying he shifts his personality, because I don't think I've shifted out of a people pleasing personality or perfectionist personality. I think it's just our personality. We just learn to work within it, or in healthy ways. And I just think that that's shifted too, right? So he probably is more dominant in other relationships rather than the one with me. maybe against the adverse counselors or whatnot. He's able to use that more.
In the beginning, did he ever look to you and say, "Wow, you've changed"?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't think it was ever like, "Oh, you've changed." It's just like, "Oh,"
and not in a negative. This is different. Right,
this is different.
This is
I'm
new.
liking this. Yeah.
Where is this going?
Right. What are you saying here?
Right.
Sure. I mean, because we're human, right? If we're used to certain ways of our partner showing up, we're going to be like, "Wait, what is happening right now?" But I think at the same time, there has been time for him to grow and get used to it, right? Because this has been over years now. This isn't just like it happened yesterday. So I think now if he were to look back, he'd be like, "Yeah, you changed. It was different. It was weird."
He might actually have a different conversation now. Now that he's passed through it and he reflects back on it.
Yeah, I think he'd be like, "Yeah, it wasn't too bad."
It turned out okay.
It was fine that she left the firm. It's fine. I didn't have a problem with
it. So with your children, do they ever, I know being in this, you kind of just do it automatically, but do you find that the communication between you and your children have actually opened up more, or has given you a better space to communicate with them?
Absolutely. I think that that is actually one of the best gifts that I've gotten out of all of the training that I've done and just the work that I do on a daily basis, is being able to slow down and take my time with communication with them. I think when I was a younger mom, and again, the overachiever would rear its head, and it was like, we have to do it this way and it has to be perfect. And
where were you at in my life 20 years ago? Right?
And we would hold ourselves to these crazy standards, and then our kids would be holding themselves. I mean, it's no wonder that my oldest two are the most overachievers that I've got. And the other three are a little more like, yeah, I want to achieve things,
Right.
but there is but a little
Right.
more compassionate. It probably has something to do with it. But no, I think that it has offered a lot more just deeper communication with my kids, and just being able to recognize to give them space that they are my kids, but I use my with a little bit of trepidation because they're not really mine. And that was the biggest shift that I made as a mom, was that they are humans. They're their own human. They're their own person, and allowing them to have that space. I get the privilege of being their mother, but they have to have their own autonomy. They have to they have to be able to create their own happiness. I want to contribute to it, but I'm not responsible for it. And that was a huge shift for me as a mom, was that recognizing that my job as mom is to contribute to their happiness, but ultimately they've got to define what's going to bring them joy and happiness for themselves, which goes into, my oldest not following the linear path that most follow, high school, college. She did high school, professional ballerina. And for me, being in growing up in that traditional world of this is the very linear path you should take, that was that allowed for that space to happen where we didn't have conflict. I would get parents look at me and say, oh my gosh, was that a difficult conversation when she told you she wanted? No, it wasn't, because ultimately this is her passion. This is what's going to bring her joy and happiness. And it doesn't mean she's not going to finish school. It just means she's going to do it in a different way, different timeline, different way. Maybe it's not necessarily in the traditional school campus. Maybe it's done differently. It's allowing them the space to create that. My work and what I do has allowed me the ability to do that, and to hold that space for them in a different way than I think I would have previously.
And how about your husband? So I listened to what you were saying. You was like, you're not responsible for their happiness. Did you still have that same aha moment when it came to your relationship? So you're not responsible for the happiness of your spouse, but just to contribute to it in any way by leaving his law firm.
100%, right? Because I feel responsible. I thought that it was mine to do. And it is so important in relationships to recognize that we don't, and I think you said it really, really well earlier. You said, we don't look for that partner to complete us. It's of the same nature, where we can't look for this other person to make us happy, much less we can make them happy. They're ultimately responsible for creating that for themselves. We contribute it by being in relationship with them. Or contribute.
And I think so many times in relationships, that's where we go wrong. Right.
Trying to make the other person happy.
That codependency where you feel as though if they're not, or even that person, like if I'm not happy, it's your fault and you need to make me happy. Yes. As opposed to, trying to figure out where am I going wrong, where I'm not feeling complete or happy or, in a good space.
Now with parenting, I don't know why I couldn't get that word out. With parenting, I feel the same way. You want to just dive in and just kind of mold that clay and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to go here, do this, and you're going to grow up. You're going to have this. And then they come, it's like, no, I want to do something totally different. And it's like,
I don't know if he's past that yet.
I'm not really totally past that, but I'm working on it.
The traditional sense, right? So like you said, you have,
because that's what society has put on us. I mean, like that's what we were taught. But it's like, okay, fine. There's a freedom, because just because you don't go to college, you don't follow that linear path, doesn't mean you stop learning. You're learning. It just may not be in an institution. Life always has something to teach you. So I had to look at it from a different perspective. But at first it was like, what did I do wrong? I mean, why aren't you following this path? So when it comes to parenting, there's many different twists and turns. So you constantly, as a parent, you have to evolve. But that also came into play with the relationship. Tina obviously viewed things a lot differently than I do. I'm more of a straight line. They need to do this, that, and the other. And she's like, no, they need the freedom to do that. Freedom? So it created a little conflict, things that now we have to work on. Now I have to deal with the parenting side, then I have to deal with the relationship side. So it's ever evolving. So I get what you're saying about that.
I think you were asking a question with the children.
Well, it was kind of a question and a statement, because I was just saying that you have to evolve. You have to kind of let go. And that's tough for a parent to just say, okay, I need you to be you. I need you to grow up and be the person that you need to be. So I need to step back, which is very difficult.
I would say, how do you know that when to kind of let go, and when to say, well, wait a minute, this is kind of, maybe we need to rethink this path that you're taking?
That's an amazing question, actually, because I think I still struggle with that even now, where I'm like, do I say something or don't I say something?
Even with all the years of training, right?
Right. It's like,
so they're like, Mom, who are you talking to in there? And you're like, really having it like no one's in here but me.
And I truly think that this is when we really have to trust our own instincts and our own intuition. You know, I don't think there's a blanket answer for every single relationship or every single situation. I think it really comes down to owning, really honoring the relationship you have with that child, and really truly actively listening to what they're saying. And recognize when they're saying something and we're having a reaction to it where we're like, oh my gosh, we need to switch this path, just slowing it down a little bit and checking in and saying, wait, is this my projection of a fear I have? Or is this my projection of a wish that I would have wanted for them? Just slowing it down and giving yourself that grace to not react immediately and really recognize what's motivating the desire for the shift. And then maybe it's less about being attached to, giving yourself the time to not be so attached to a specific outcome for your child, but rather let's get into the process of what we're doing here, right? So a dialogue around what would be the purpose for them, what's motivating them to make this decision for their path, understand their motivation. You're doing your own self check-in to understand your motivation, and then you guys have a dialogue together about what would be the best decision for, and doing it together. I'm trying to think, even with my son, having conversation around, what college, yes, he wants to play lacrosse. Great. I, of course, as a parent and a mom, really want him to be challenged and go to a place that's, academically matches what I feel. And so there's been a lot of internal dialogue. Like, how much do I say versus how much do I let him make his own choice? And so I would say that relates really well to your question, Tina Marie, how I've had to have that struggle of like, okay, do I say something here or do I just let it be? In the beginning, I think I was saying too much and we would have conflict. And so then it was a recognition of, where's this conflict coming from? Oh, wow. This conflict is coming from the fact that I'm projecting my desires onto him. What's motivating me? And truly the outcome I want for him is to be happy and to be fulfilled. Well, the truth I know is he's capable of creating that wherever he goes. So absolutely, I can release the idea that I have to direct him to a specific school. And instead, my conversation needs to be about, will you be happy at this university or this college? God forbid you can't play lacrosse. And that shifted. So I hope I answered that question.
You did.
You bring up another point.
Absolutely.
Because of college. I mean, the whole college thing, we have 3 kids and we went through the college thing 3 times. And each child is different, right? And I had to learn that. Right? Because I have my rules and regulations.
It would be so easy if they were all the same. You'd just be like, we're going here.
Right. You're doing this, you're doing that.
Where would be the fun in that, right?
Yeah. Well, they taught me a lot. So, yeah. And it was the thing. I was like, okay, I had you for 18 years. And now you can go anywhere in the country you want. This is totally your choice. And I'm going to support it wholeheartedly. So I had to learn to step back and say, you can go wherever. I'm not going to put any restraints on where you want, where you're going. I'm just going to be supportive. So I had to learn that.
Learn that one. Yep. That takes a lot of internal dialogue.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of, we homeschooled for a little bit. So it was like, we used to always say when we were talking to ourselves, there was parent-teacher conference.
Nice.
So we did a lot of conferencing.
So I have a question because in today's world, not everyone has that great dialogue with their children, right? So we can't sit down and have those conversations where we're actually in a place where we're both agreeing. So for those parents that want to have those conversations with their children that may be making choices in life that, I don't want to say are the wrong path, but could be reevaluated. Because I think sometimes children do things just out of spite of not going that traditional route, right? So how do parents get that communication back effectively with their children to just, because I don't know about yours, but kids today think totally different.
Oh,
they're a totally different generation. So just
Too much social media.
Helping those parents out there, right? Helping those parents out there to not only get the communication back with their spouse, but get it back with their children.
Yeah, by the way, I totally agree with you. They use words that I'm like, what even is that word? What does that mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're like, and they think you know what they're talking about. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
No clue what you're saying right now.
Right.
You're speaking a totally different language.
It truly is.
It's really, I think the thing that's popping up for me is something that somebody told me, which is you have to be willing and ready to have a conversation with them when they're ready. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes we're like, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation. You're going to talk to me now. And our child doesn't want to talk at that point. And it's about allowing space for when they are ready to make yourself available. And I know that almost sounds people pleasing in nature, but it's really not. It's really just recognizing when your kids, especially teens, I'm really focusing on teens in this context, they might not be ready when you're ready to have a conversation, but the moment that they are, it's really important to figure out a way to make yourself available if you can, so that we can, when we're talking about trying to reopen that dialogue, in those moments, it becomes a top priority to just meet them when they're ready to have that conversation. That's the first thing that's popping into my mind. The other thing is really creating a safe space, recognize maybe just owning. It goes back to the relationship. How I was saying there's always that 3% that we own. Even as a parent, there's that percent that we own. So it's recognizing, how am I showing up in conversation with my child where they might feel like they can't have an open dialogue with me.
Right.
Taking ownership for that for yourself, and then asking, how might I want to shift how I'm showing up to create more of a safe space to re-engage in dialogue with my child. And I say this because, I would say that as I was a younger mom, I used to be so much more intense on it has to be done this way. And I would be short tempered, right? It was like, I never had a huge temper, but I'd be quicker to lose my patience. And that was the big shift that I made, is like, oh, wow, I need to slow it down and create space that they know that they can have a dialogue with me. And I'm not going to immediately have a demand on them or something of that nature. That's what created the space for them to now come and have dialogue with me. So it really does come back to self. It's understanding, how am I showing up in conversation? Can I shift to create a safer space for my child to want and desire to have conversation with me, and to work towards creating that with them?
That's great. And I'm just going to take it one step further, because this week we're talking about blended families.
Yes.
So for families who are being blended together, whereas now it's not just you as the mom and trying to have a conversation with your child, but now you as the mom, the stepmom, and I'm trying to build a relationship, have communication with children who now we're all together, which is hard because now you have the other parent who may not be in the same space. So how do we help those families to bring that bond together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down first when we're in blended families. And I'm actually thinking about a client that I've been working with where this is an issue. It's, slowing it down to recognize, what is the story that I've told myself as I've shown up into as we've created this family. So am I telling myself that I'm supposed to show up with this certain facade or this certain mask, or, these are my specific boundaries. I can't step out of my back. Just really become aware of how we're showing up, and then figuring out, what actions we want to take. And it always comes back to that authentic communication. And it's not about confrontation. It's about really recognizing what it is that I'm feeling and I'm needing, and being able to dialogue and make requests of our partner or of other people in our family. And I think that that's really the heart of how we create that space within these blended families, because it's true, when you're in a blended family and, let's say, dad and child, and he remarries, and now there's stepmom all in one house, and then biological mom is living on her own, she's still mom. And so we have to figure out a way where we can compassionately communicate, whereby the child knows ultimately he or she has, mom, stepmom, and mom who all love them love that child equally, and that they are supported no matter what. And ultimately, if we can keep our focus on the child or children and less about ourselves, that's when we can actually create those healthier dynamics within everyone. It's when we let our own egos get in the way and we forget that it's the children that are top priority in those situations.
Yeah, and not using children as pawns.
Right. How do we open up that communication? So you're the stepmom and you have the biological mom that may be feeding whatever or saying whatever, because it's the messiness between the two, the mom and the dad, right? That usually blurs the view of the child. So how do we open that? How do they open that communication up to let the child know, you know what, I care about you. This is a safe space. Let's build a relationship of love and respect as well as communication. How do they go into that area?
Actually, I think that it's just what you just said, actually creating and having that dialogue with the child of, you are safe here, having respect for the child, as well as, because we can't expect respect if we don't give it. So it's about, really showing up with that respect, being very open with the child. If there is some animosity, maybe with mom who no longer lives in the house, for instance, it's about not getting into the weeds, right? We're not going to sling mud or say anything to the child about their mother, because that's not our place. It's about keeping the focus on the child and the relationship that you're building with that child, and then open dialogue, with your partner, for instance. It's really important to let your partner know what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're needing, and the two of you also communicating with each other as to what's going on, not holding it all in and letting resentment build. Because when we let resentment build, that's when, very unhealthy things take place.
Yes.
And I say that because teens are a really hard time, right? Just with your own kids. But you say having the respect, right? In order to give it and receive it. But sometimes as a teen, it's if the teen is not giving the parent the respect, the step parent, you don't want, where do they set the boundaries, right? So you want to be respectful to the child, but if they're being disrespectful, how do you, meet that with respect so that they know? Because if they're being disrespectful, how do you,
how you reach them?
How do you get on terms of respect?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But you got to understand where the discontent come from.
Well,
with the child.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, so you're there in the situation, and as a professional, someone comes to you and say, well, I want to be respectful. I want to open up this lines of communication, but the child is being very disrespectful. And that's from anywhere from the ages of 10 to 20, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because, so, and it's hard to do that. So how do you be respectful and still be a parent and set boundaries?
Yeah, it's tough. It's not like there's a, do A, B, and C, and then all things will be fixed. Because the truth is, our kids do have the autonomy to decide how they're going to show up and whether or not they're going to be respectful. I think part of it is knowing what your boundaries are. For instance, if I'm showing respect and this person is not respecting me, we can still be loving to people without overgiving and overcompensating. So it's about setting those boundaries and being clear. I really do love you. I do respect you, but these certain things I can't tolerate. For instance, if they're being really disrespectful with how they talk. And granted, I'm not in a blended family, but I know that I've gone through this with my own teenagers where the cursing, and it's like, I'm not okay being spoken to that way. So as long as that's the dialogue you want to have with me, I'm going to choose not to engage in conversation with you. When you're able to have conversation without that, by all means, come talk to me. So that's just a slight example of being able to set my own boundary of what I'm willing to accept. I'm also not going to get into the weeds with them and argue with them, because now if I were to argue with my son on that level, now I'm truly showing up from that disempowered place, right? I'm trying to prove you need to respect me because I'm mom, and almost justifying or arguing and defending, you have to respect me because I'm the mother, versus simply just saying, out of respect, I'm not going to engage in this dialogue with you. And when you're ready to have a conversation with me that's of a more respectful tone, I'm here. I'm absolutely ready, willing, and able, but I'm just not going to do it in this moment. That's that boundary setting that comes into play too, which I think is really important. And the point that I'm making is it's about not getting into the push and pull with the teenager, especially because we can get into that, and we do it. If we really break it down and unpack it, a lot of that has to do with our own ego at that moment of
Sure.
Absolutely.
that we are the most in charge. And at the end of the day, again, the focus isn't on who's the most in charge. It's the relationship that we're trying to build.
And that's true.
That's
And it is a
amazing.
lot of pushing and pulling.
That's some good stuff right there for people who may be going through that, because you go through it with your own teenagers. So I'm sure you have to go through it when you're doing blended families.
For sure. But you know what? You got to stand your ground, be respectful, and not get down in the weeds. Like you said, I think that's key. And not overcompensate, trying to buy them everything to try to buy their love or whatever. Yeah. So it's so many different dynamics, especially with blended families. Yep.
So in terms of your relationship with your spouse, going through different stages in your relationship, at what point were you and him on the same, where you said, okay, this is something that needs to change, so let's work towards being this way as opposed to the old way, if that kind of makes sense? So it was kind of taking your relationship from where it used to be to understanding we're going to grow and evolve, and let's kind of make a path of how to get there.
So I'm thinking about that question because I think it's happened in different iterations as we've grown up, right? Over the 20 some years that we've been married. It's, I think some of those moments have been rather less conscious than others, where we just sort of kind of went into it. I think over the last, as I left the firm and started my own business and really entered into this realm that I was passionate about, that was probably the most conscious moment where we said, okay, this is going to shift. I'm not necessarily going to be the person that takes care of all of the things as I used to. It's got to be more of a balance is a great word, a balanced approach with both of us showing up, taking care of different things. I think that for us in our relationship, like I said, there's been moments of it being more a natural evolution and more of the conscious choices. I would say that for the two of us, there wasn't one versus the other that was better. I just think that when we consciously chose to shift certain things, that's when I think, it takes a little bit more in terms of commitment, right? Because you butt up against, well, this is not how we've always done it.
Right.
When it's a natural evolution, you don't really notice it.
Right.
But like when you're consciously choosing, it's like, oh, but this is uncomfortable. I guess that's the best way that I can answer that question.
Yeah, it's funny because we always say we take marriages off cruise control because you know what? We've always done it this way. Things are going well. When you take it off cruise control, you be like, no, we're going to go over here this time. Right? So now you have to be conscious. You have to be more forthgiving and just really dialed into your relationship to actually make it work. So,
and I guess that's with anything, just being conscious of the decisions that we need to make and the changes that we need to make, and being respectful in the manner of, okay, this is what I would like for it to be, as opposed to this is what it's going to be.
Right, because what we were talking about, we were going to get married, have kids, get a job, be successful, yada, yada, yada. And then when you want to do something different that deviates from that, now you have to put some effort into this whole relationship thing, right? Now I need to pay attention.
Now you got to pay attention. It's like changing habits, though, right?
Yes.
We have a habit, and it's like, oh, but I don't want to do that. You can't just wake up the next day and say, okay, my habits change. You've got to consciously make the choice each and every day of how you're going to show up.
Absolutely,
right.
And that's also the conscious choice, right, in the relationship that you're going to have. So, and I think the biggest part of this, if we could take anything from the biggest part, as we were always preaching, is that it starts with us, right?
100%.
It's a conscious decision that we have to become aware of the things that we need to change within ourselves to project that out. It all starts within.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And the little piece of that is letting go of the idea that we're going to change the other person, because that's our job. It's not our job.
Right. Well, not even our job. We can't do it anyway.
We can't do it.
Right?
Wow.
If we definitely can't change our kids, so we definitely can't change someone who's our spouse, because they even have more age, and that's just who they are, right? So we know habits form over a long period of time. So it's funny because Jason and I were talking about how, people have this idea of when I get married, the person does this now, but when we get married, they're not going to do that anymore.
That's going to change.
Yeah. Right. That'll change.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. It's so crazy how we just make up things, right? That this individual who is who they are, who we were attracted to, all of a sudden we're going to say I do, and everything is going to change and everything is just going to fall into place. Yeah. So hopefully we help some relationships wake up and Yeah,
that's not the case. It's not how it is.
So if you could leave one thing with the audience, what would that be? Like something that you've learned over the years that has been very impactful in your life and in your relationship.
The biggest thing the one statement that I had heard, and I don't remember who said it, but that I've carried with me is that life is happening through us and not to us. And it's happening for us and not to us. And I would say that that's the biggest thing that I hold near and dear to my heart, because when we start to feel like things are happening to us, we fall into victimhood. And that's not a place where we can make empowered choices from. And so especially in dynamics of relationship, we're going to have challenges. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, this person is doing this to me, it's about why is this happening and how is this happening for me and how can I grow from this? And when we can anchor into that, we can figure out ways to meet the challenge and to truly evolve and grow from it.
That is amazing.
Thank you. Amazing.
Thank you. Well said. Well said.
Excellent. But Kamini, before we get out of here, how can people get in touch with you? Give us website, books. I know you have everything, courses, whatever.
Or social media pages, whatever, right. Give us all the good stuff.
All right. So my website is kaminiwood.com. That's KAMINIWOOD.com. I am also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest with the handle of It's Authentic Me. And I do have a book that's out there. It is called Life's Gentle Reminders. It is not actually a cover-to-cover read. It's more of a book of small analogies that talks about everyday experiences that I've had personally and how I was able to shift them into either a learning experience or looking at something to pick out the positive, even in the most frustrating moments, and challenges the reader to do the same in their own life. So those are just little ways that people can stay in touch or be in touch.
Okay. And tell us again exactly what you do.
So I am a professional certified coach that works with individuals who feel stuck or feel not enough. And we work on gaining clarity and deep self-acceptance in order to move forward professionally, as well as build healthy, non-toxic relationships.
That's wonderful. Thank
you.
It
wonderful.
Has been a pleasure having you.
Sure
it truly
has.
And I hope this is not the last. I hope this is one of many, because I feel you are a wealth of information, and it would be a shame to just get a little bit of it.
Right.
So, I mean, I think you're absolutely amazing as far as helping people to get from that unstuck place. Right. And then to move forward. Yes. Yes. More people like you, which means that if there's more people like you, then you're help creating more people that can be their true, which is the name of your book, right? The Authentic Me, or your website, your Pinterest.
Program. Yes. It's Authentic Me. Exactly.
Which we're trying to be, right? We're all trying to be our authentic self. Because if we're trying to duplicate someone else, then that's when we lose who we are initially. So it has been a pleasure. I know I probably kind of.
You know what?
I didn't let him get much in today.
Nope. Yeah. But that's okay, because when we have female guests on, the male just have to kind of sit back and they talk that mother and family lifestyle. That's okay. That's all right. We have some men coming on, so don't worry about it. That's quite all right.
I just know from a place of motherhood, when you get to that point when you're trying to do the career and the motherhood and the wife, you somewhere along there you go, wait a minute. Like, I'm not 100% satisfied. As not that you're not happy playing those roles, but it's someplace in you that's stuck, and you have to kind of rise up and say, okay, what can I do so that I'm not only fulfilling these things, but I'm happy in it, right? This is exactly who I'm supposed to be at this exact moment in time. And I'm happy with the inside me. Yeah, we give so much of ourselves to our children and our relationships that sometimes we lose ourselves. Well, unconsciously, we just lose ourselves, and we
most
don't even.
Moms do.
Right.
I always know who I was. I lose myself. But,
I know, because the man usually say, "Honey, handle this."
Yeah, please do. I can't deal with this right now.
As your husband says, I'm going to let you handle this, and I'm going to be in the other room if you need me.
Exactly.
So thank you, and as always, we're in it to win it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lovin' Beyond the I Do podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Legendary Relationship, or visit our website at legendaryrelationship.com. Till next time, remember to make every day count.